When I wake up, I make a beeline for sunlight. So I'm going to get sunlight in my eyes. I'll probably go into the grave saying this, so forgive me if people have heard me say this before, but the single best thing you can do for your sleep, your energy, your mood, your wakefulness, your metabolism is to get natural light in your eyes early in the day. Don't wear sunglasses to do it. It takes about 10 minutes or so. If you live in a cloudy area, if you're in the UK in the winter, yes.
Or the summer,
maybe you resort to some artificial light as a replacement, but as much as one can, get bright, natural, and if not natural, artificial light in your eyes early in the day without sunglasses. Contacts and eyeglasses are fine. Don't try and do it through a window or windshield. It's going to take far too long. This sets in motion a huge number of different neurobiological and hormonal cascades that are good for you, reduces stress late at night, offsets cortisol, a million different things really that are good for you. So I get that. And yes, sometimes.
Is that a walk? Doing a little walk?
Ideally, that would be a walk, but sometimes we'll just go into the yard and have some coffee and soak in whatever sunlight through the clouds. If it's a cloudy, overcast day, it might be 20, 30 minutes. If it's a very bright day, it might just be a few minutes. But really the quality studies on humans that have looked at this say, try and get as much natural light as you can in the morning hours, whenever it is that is for you, especially the first 3 hours after waking. If you can work outside, great. If you can get near a window, because as opposed to just in a dark conference room, that's better. But if you can get outside, that would be fantastic. So I get sunlight. I hydrate, I drink water, and then yerba mate is my favorite form of caffeine.
Are you waiting? How long are you waiting from
90 to 120 minutes.
Are you doing any salts during that time? Are you taking any electrolytes in?
I am a fan of water with element. Yep. Before I had element packets, I would just take a little bit of sea salt or pink salt.
What's your favorite element flavor?
I like them all. There's one I don't like. I'm not a fan of the chocolate one, but I like it. Yeah, some people love it. My podcast producer, his wife loves that, so I give it to her, the chocolate mint one. But I like the raspberry, the citrus one. I love that stuff.
Mango chili is. Have you opened the mango chili and breathed in shortly afterwards? It's like being pepper sprayed. No, it's absolutely insane. It's like being blasted in the face. But yeah, I mean that's just the best way. That cold glass of water and that first thing in the morning. And I mean, it was you who reassured me of what I thought was bro science about your adenosine system not being active for the first 90 minutes. And if you're going to pump caffeine onto that, you're not really actually acting on that. Your adrenal system is the one that you need to be looking at, optimal hydration, all that sort of stuff. It's just such a good way to start the day. So, okay, we've got 90 minutes deep. What have you been doing in that? You've had your light in the eyes. What have you been doing between that and the yerba mate 90 minutes?
I do everything I can to not do email, not do social media, and to take care of a few critical tasks. These days, I have this obsession with trying to do one cognitively hard thing a day, and one physically hard thing a day. Now, not extreme physical, not David Goggins level workouts or anything, but in that 90 minutes, I'll typically try and read a research article start to finish, or I'll work on a document that I might be doing a grant or a research paper or planning a podcast or researching a podcast. I try and get my brain into kind of a linear mode. I try and narrow that aperture. So if I don't, the distraction that's created by social media and interactions with others can kind of wick out into the rest of the day. So I'm not necessarily trying to finish something in that time, but I try and do something challenging. I experience great pleasure from battling through something mentally challenging, but that's something that I built up since my university years when I was about 19 or so, got serious about school and really started to experience the deep pleasure of like, I figured that out, or like, that was really tough. I don't always succeed, but that's what I'm doing in that hour to 90 minutes. But I confess sometimes we'll take a walk during that time and maybe talk through some things that are challenging, or sometimes I get lazy and I'll miss a day of that cognitive challenge. Then I do caffeine about 90 to 120 minutes after waking. And even though I prefer to work out earlier, I generally will then do some sort of physical workout. I have a very consistent routine. I've done it for 30 years where I weight train for 45 or minutes to an hour every other day. And occasionally I take an extra day off. And occasionally, due to travel or other commitments, I'll occasionally double up 2 days and then take 2 days off.
Yep.
So it's really boring, to talk about workout schedules, but it's really simple. It's like, I'll do a kind of pushing day, rest, pulling day, upper body push, up rest, upper body pull, rest, and then legs, take 2 days off, something like that.
Are you doing, on the off days, are you doing some sort of zone 3?
Always jogging or skipping rope. Those are my favorite forms of cardio. Sometimes swimming, but typically I'll go running for 30 to 45 minutes. Or if I'm feeling a little bit lazier, because I always find the high intensity stuff to be easier than the long drawn out stuff, I'll sometimes throw on a weight vest, a 30 or 50 pound weight vest, and I'll go out for a shorter run. Or I'm a big fan of Knees Over Toes, Ben Patrick. I know you had him on.
Yeah, great guy.
We were down in Costa Rica with him and his wife, who had the best time and learned so much. I'll occasionally do a backwards, hill walk, or throw on the weight vest for that. We sometimes will get bands and so there's a great way to combine this. We will sometimes get 2 people in one of these thick bands, do hill walks in the morning while getting our sunlight.
Yeah.
But that I don't really consider a workout. I consider that just kind of rehabilitate us, movement. So on the off days, I'm doing cardio, and sometimes that's in the morning, sometimes that's in the evening. I do not like to weight train in the second half of the day because I like to be really caffeinated when I weight train. I like to listen to loud, fast music. Most of the time, not always. I keep my phone out or off for most workouts. Podcasts maybe if I'm running, but I really try hard when I'm working out to just focus on the workout. And those workouts, the weight training workouts, are always 10 minutes or so of warm up and then no more than 40 to 50 minutes of really hard work. If I do train hard any longer, I don't recover enough to be able to come in a few days later. And when I train that way, I generally make pretty consistent progress.
And you're taking yourself up until, what's that, probably maybe 10, 30, 11 a.m., something like that now?
Yeah, and then I'll eat my first real meal. Now, occasionally I'll wake up really hungry if I didn't eat that well the night before. Yeah. But typically after I train, I'll eat. I like oatmeal after I train. Oatmeal, fruit, some fish oil, protein drink, and then maybe 90 to 120 minutes after that, I'll have a real lunch. My lunch is pretty much the biggest meal of the day. If I have my way, it'll be a steak, a salad, maybe a little more starch, although I sort of got it earlier.
Yep.
Brazil nuts. That meal sometimes can extend longer and longer.
I love to eat. A feeding fast,
I love to eat. Yeah. So I'll eat, and then I confess I usually will work a little bit more for about 30 minutes or an hour, typically email, and then I'll take a 10 to 30 minute yoga nidra nap or a nap, and then come back refreshed.
I really struggle with the naps, man. I come back after that and my emotions are all over the place. I'm disoriented. Maybe it's because I struggle to fall asleep super quickly, and therefore I'm extending that period out for a little bit longer than I need. I probably need to try the yoga nidra thing. But for me, I'm absolutely all over if I do that. I wake up and I don't know what day it is, and my emotions always feel a little bit out of whack as well.
I wake up grumpy from naps sometimes, I'm told.
Okay.
There are a few times when I've woken up just really angry. I have no idea what that's about. I don't know any of the neurochemistry associated with that. Sometimes I wake up from naps, it's really pleasant. I'll occasionally do, if the nap is early enough in the day, afterwards I'll have a nice double espresso and get back into work. That's the hardest part of the day, actually. If I was well structured in the early part of the day, it's that 2 or 3 p.m. The key is then to try and get something really useful done cognitively again. So some people might look at this and say, wait, you're working for an hour in the morning and 30 minutes here and an hour in the afternoon. When are you actually working? But it's really about the depth of the trench when you're working. And so if I'm going to drop into something again for a few hours in the afternoon, I'm really going to drop into it. And that's typically phone off and out of the room. And my goal is to get to the evening time so that I can do the things that I want in the evening.
Yep.
I can enjoy, I'm always setting a goal of the next time block. So this is something I've been doing for a long time, but even more so lately. I don't think my goal in the next hour is to do blank. I think this is dopamine reward predictions in action. I think, okay, if I get this workout done, then I'll be able to eat at more or less the same time, which I enjoy, and then something else will happen. So I'm very focused on what I'm doing, but I'm doing it for the purposes of opening up the next door to the next thing. So if I can get that afternoon work block done, I'm thinking, if I can just really get this podcast recorded, which I enjoy.
Is that your usual time to record, middle of the afternoon?
Well, it used to be in the morning, but I'm putting more and more preparation into them all the time. My poor podcast producer, he's like, I always joke that the one thing these podcasts probably will succeed in doing, meaning my podcast, is they're going to cure insomnia, because some of them are so damn long. But I experience so much pleasure from spending a week or two researching something and then putting some structure on. And as you know, podcasting is its own sort of natural drug. It just feels good if you enjoy doing this sort of thing. So typically we're starting late in the day now and going till pretty late.
For me, the problem that I have, so I'm fasted right now, we're 1 minute to 4 p.m.
You haven't eaten anything today?
No, nothing.
Goodness gracious.
So, but that's the only way. If I eat, my thoughts become slower. I'm not as verbally articulate. I'm nowhere near as agile. Now, I could push this super, super late, I'm sure, and it would be probably a pretty bad idea. Maybe I could go protein and fat, or just mostly protein earlier on, and that would have avoided. But I just find that my thoughts and my verbal articulation just goes through the toilet.
It's adrenaline. I think that, sorry to interrupt you, but if you ingest a bunch of glucose, or, I think you're getting that. I mean, you've got to have I'm guessing that if we were to tap your vein right now, if we could do microdialysis on your brain, that you have a nice low but steady level of adrenaline. And listen, this adrenaline thing, this dopamine thing is no joke. This is the stuff of human evolution, right? These are the same neurochemicals. This is the energy drink of human evolution. This is not the Rockstar Red Bull, et cetera. That stuff just hijacks this very system. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just feeding this very same system. So if you find an eating schedule or a fasting schedule that allows you to tap into that as a resource, I don't care what anyone says about whether or not fasting will make you live longer or not. Who knows, right? If you're in the control group, you know what's going to happen. But presumably everyone dies eventually. So pick your mode of eating, be my guest. But if you figured out a way to tap into this in a way that works for you, by all means leverage that. Because until somebody comes along and says that intermittent fasting is unhealthy, well then to me it seems, at least for me, eating between 11 a.m. ish and 8 p.m. ish is great. And what I can also tell you is that having a consistent meal schedule, meaning a feeding window, we absolutely know, I don't know why this isn't discussed more, we absolutely know that helps anchor your sleep schedule. And having a anchored sleep schedule helps anchor your light viewing schedule. And a light viewing, so it all starts to piece together. I think that what's lost in the discussion about nutrition, except for the fact that most online discussions about nutrition are carried out by people.
They're religious.
Well, they're religious, but they also seem to be carried out by people that have real feelings of powerlessness in themselves. Like it comes through, because they're quibbling over whether or not you should eat a cracker or not, or whether or not, inhaling oxygen, westward is going to break your fast or not. I'm obviously joking.
I saw David Sinclair came on my show twice, and he's a fantastic human. I know you're friends with him. And he talked about the fact that his resveratrol goes into a small amount of fatty yogurt, I think, because it's like brick
That's
dust,
what he does,
right?
yeah.
So you need to mix it in, and it's homemade yogurt and something else and something else. And it's like it's a shot of yogurt, right? It's enough for him to put his little capsule of resveratrol in. And the comments were alight with people saying that's not a real fast.
This is hilarious.
Because you've got...
It's so sad. It's so sad that we can't have a nuanced conversation about nutrition online. Let's be fair. Calories in, calories out applies, right? I don't think the laws of thermodynamics have disappeared. And yet you have people who would argue that it doesn't. And we'll let them have their arguments. I think that the key thing is when you find an eating schedule that works for the other things that you need to do in life, It's really beautiful. Because then you really start to exert some control over these energy systems. What we're talking about is focus and defocus. We're talking about focus and deliberate decompression, whether or not it's yoga nidra or a nap or simply a walk. And food, as you point out, is a wonderful source of caloric energy. We need it at some point, but it also can create this parasympathetic response where we feel very tired, especially if you don't eat for long periods of time and then you eat substantial amount of starches, you will feel like calmer and more relaxed. And maybe sleepy and maybe brain foggy. So I've been, of course, assaulted by this online. I do tend to eat some more starches in the evenings and fewer proteins. And sure, you can show me 20 double-blind, placebo-controlled or randomized controlled trials saying that if you're going to eat starches, you should eat them in the early part of the day. Well, I do that too after I train. But ultimately, what I'm interested in doing is maintaining the kind of bodily health and aesthetic that I'm looking for, my blood lipids that I'm looking for. But I want to accomplish things in life. So I think if one gets too distracted by what's possible with nutrition, it can really take somebody off target. No one ever succeeded in creating anything useful in terms of work or relationships by overly focusing on changing their dietary intake. But so once it works, once something works for you, I say just stick
lean
with
into it.
Just lean into it, and that can change over time. So that can really change over time.
Do you know Alex Hormozy? You familiar with him?
Sounds familiar.
Really hot shit on the internet at the moment. This sort of gym bro who has founded this company and is now moving on to bigger and better things. I'm pretty sure he's eaten the same lunch for 10 years or something. He always has the same lunch, and he's got the exact same thought process around this that you do. If you were to, going back to the morning routine thing, if you were to design, or if you were to instruct someone to do the worst possible things in the morning to set their day up for failure, what would they be?
Wake up and stay in bed. There are good reasons to stay in bed in the morning. But once those are completed, then staying in bed is...
Curtains drawn.
Yeah, curtains drawn. Just using passively scrolling on social media. There are neurobiological data showing that when you are upright, you actually are stimulating this area of the brain called locus ceruleus, whereas when you recline, you actually are less alert. Literally, the position of your body dictates some of your levels of alertness. So
that's why you suggest people to not sit like this at their work desk, right?
Yes, and if you're looking down while working, you're actually less alert than you could be if your eyes are averted slightly over nasal
most people
level.
That are on their phone,
including me, and the postural stuff is really bad too. I mean, I'm trying to really combat that internal rotation, the C-shaped human kind of thing, it's really not good. I'm really trying. In fact, this is so common now, this C-shaped human thing, that it almost feels strange to be upright, like people that, exactly, the open, the sort of external rotation is good for us. We know this, but
in bed.
I would say in bed, so people are on their phone, they're in bed, they're not getting enough light, or just artificial light, or they're trying to get the sunlight through the window. Terrible. They are then going and sitting and getting into like hip flexor contraction. They're drinking coffee too early in the day. They aren't getting into any kind of movement, but it's mostly about this sort of randomization of activities. You're sort of making a cup of coffee while texting, not getting sunlight, then they're scattering that in with like a little bit of work, but then something hits that's stressful and they're diverting their attention. They're sort of building in this attention deficit-like disorder through behavior.
So they're not single tasking, they're not monotasking, and they're not being deliberate or intentional with the things that they're doing. They're just allowing the morning to kind of come and take them wherever the wind blows.
That's right. And I have to say, even though I describe my morning routine accurately, if I were to really optimize it, and I've done this from time to time, I would get up, I would hydrate, and I would immediately exercise. I would use that early, peaking of the cortisol response that comes with waking to get the body into action, sort of Jocko Willink style, right? 4:30. I always see his posts, but I see them at 7 a.m.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah.
So
Jocko was up before me again today.
Yeah. He seems to always beat me by a few minutes, unless I wake up in the middle of the night for a moment. But to really get into action, because that's going to generate its own dopamine and adrenaline response. Anytime I've worked out really early, like if I have a flight and then moved into the other components of my day, I find that I feel better all day long. I also will say if I work out really early, maybe between 7 and 8 a.m., well, then my first meal might land at 9 a.m. Yeah. So, you need to be flexible with some of these things, but the general principles apply.
I noticed that you haven't put cold exposure into your morning routine. I'm going to guess you must have a cold tub of some kind.
Yeah, I have a cold tub and a sauna. I've been less good about that lately. The best time to do that for me is on my cardio days. I do it after the
Because
run.
You don't want to do it post-hypertrophy, because you're going to blunt some of the responses that are actually you're trying to get by the workout itself.
That's right. And I have I should say I have one rest day per week where I don't do any cardio or weight training. I really like having a complete rest day, but on that complete rest day, if I can, I'll do 20 minutes of sauna and then cold for 3 minutes, 20 minutes of sauna and then cold. I'll make the rest day reparative.
Yep.
And generally we make that social where we're talking about things. And we're very social in our working out. Like we talk, my partner and I talk while we work out. When it's time to do a set, I become a little bit of like the drill sergeant. So like, let's do your set. But then occasionally I'm the guy doing a set and I'm like, all right, so this afternoon we're going to, but I try and really focus. And I enjoy training by myself too, but generally we train together. And then typically if we're doing ice bath or sauna, we try and coordinate those things.